Dark Jewel of Arcanea. Chapter 1: The Walk-In. The city of Arcanea shimmered in the twilight like a dark jewel, its myriad facets slicing into the deepening sky with jagged shards of enchanted light. It was exactly 6:37 p.m., a time when the sun had long since retreated, leaving us in the shimmering glow of arcane lamps and the hypnotic neon signs that pulsed with magic. I sat in my office, a cramped, dimly lit space wedged uncomfortably between the bustling mages' market and the notorious underbelly of town, where the heavy, musty air mingled remnants of ancient spells with the bitter aroma of fresh transgressions. My desk, a chaotic tableau of my work, was cluttered with crumpled pages bearing hurried notes, half-completed potions bubbling in tired vials, and a collection of arcane talismans whose once proud glow had all but faded with age. Outside, Arcanea thrummed with a life only magic could instill, a vibrant, ceaseless energy that pulsed through winding cobbled streets and hidden alleyways. Yet beneath this lively veneer lay corruption, like a shadow draped over every flicker of enchantment. Every spell might harbor deceit, every shifting shadow could conceal a stealthy thief, or even something far more sinister. I leaned back in my creaking leather chair, mesmerized by the dance of light and shadow playing across the grimy window, when suddenly the door groaned as it swung open. The delicate jingling of the bells suspended in the air announced the arrival of an unexpected visitor. She entered with an aura of nervous urgency, clearly out of her element in this labyrinthine part of the city. Her clothes, impeccably clean and untouched by the rough edges of Arcanea's dark magic, spoke of a life sheltered from the city's dim mysteries. But her wide, anxious eyes betrayed an inner terror rather than wonder, scanning the cluttered room as if expecting a stray enchantment to spring to life from the piles of arcane detritus. "Mr. Moonwhisper?" she inquired softly, her voice trembling as if caught in the gusts of the infamous arcane storms that periodically roared through the alleys. "All's fine," I replied, leaning back with a casual gesture toward the solitary chair across from my desk. "What brings a gentle soul like you to this maze of miscreants and magic?" Her name was Lila, and though her story appeared as common as the worn cobblestones of this ancient city, it carried a twist that only Arcanea could conjure. She explained that her family's modest shop, a quaint little haven tucked away from the main square, had been ransacked. The intruders hadn't targeted coins or trivial baubles. They sought out an heirloom, a delicate amulet that, to her, was nothing more than a cherished relic of her great-grandmother. Yet beneath its sentimental veneer lay the kind of dangerous allure that magic infused the very bones of Arcanea. "It was my great-grandmother's," she murmured, her delicate fingers nervously twisting in her lap. "It may not be worth much in coin, but it is all we have left of her." I nodded thoughtfully, my mind rapidly cataloging the endless possibilities hidden behind such an unassuming object. In Arcanea, even an amulet could serve as a key to forbidden realms, a weapon in clandestine duels, or a vessel of unspeakable curses. While my detect magic spell could soon reveal its true nature, for now I donned the mantle of the empathetic detective, maintaining an aura of quiet confidence. "So, you're in need of recovery, are you?" I leaned in, the aged wood of my desk groaning under the pressure of my elbows as I locked eyes with her. The room was cloaked in the kind of dim light that only a city like Arcanea could cast, where every shadow whispered of secrets, and every corner held its breath for the next spell to be cast. Her nod was swift, carrying with it a flicker of desperate hope, one that I knew was at risk of being extinguished by the city's relentless darkness. "They say you're unparalleled when it comes to, well, dealing with both the arcane and the artful dodge," she admitted, her voice a hushed echo in the quiet office, yet heavy with the weight of her trust. A wry smile played at the edge of my lips, a smirk born from years of dancing on the edge of legality and the arcane. "I possess a certain flair for both worlds, indeed," I conceded, my voice steady, almost a whisper, as if to not disturb the slumbering magic around us. "But Lila, let there be no mistake, Arcanea thrives on deception. What seems straightforward here is seldom so. The deeper you delve into its mysteries, the more you'll find yourself swimming in waters as black as ink poured by the hand of midnight itself." Lila's eyes widened at my warning, but she remained resolute. I understand the risks, Mr. Moon Whisper, she said, her voice shaking slightly. But I have no one else to turn to. Please, will you help me find my family's amulet? I nodded, a sense of duty and obligation settling in my chest. There were many clients who had come to me seeking help in Arcanea, but there was something different about this young woman that tugged at my heartstrings. All right, I said finally. I'll take on your case. She let out a heavy sigh of relief and gratitude before pulling out a small pouch from her cloak and placing it on my desk. This is all the coin I have left, she said apologetically. The bag was remarkably light, even lighter than a well-circulated penny tossed around the shadowy back alleys of Arcanea. Yet, from the cleverly concealed patches and the careful reworking of her skirt to disguise its frayed edges, it was clear that the dame couldn't truly muster up any more gold. I'll start in the morning, I quipped, gesturing her toward the door with an exaggerated nod, hiding my hand which was trembled slightly under the desk where she could not see. Couldn't show a client a betraying sign of too many nights without my usual liquid medicine, the one solace that soothed my frayed nerves. With this much-needed influx of coin, I intended to rectify that particular deficiency that night, allowing myself the indulgence of a remedy I had too long gone without. But whatever the reason, I knew that I wouldn't rest until I found Lila's family's amulet and returned it safely to her. And so intended to begin another hunt through the dark streets of Arcanea, where magic reigned and secrets lurked around every corner tomorrow. She nodded again, her expression a cocktail of determination and wariness, sealing our unspoken pact. As she rose to leave, her figure seemed to dissolve into the night, becoming one with the darkness that defined Arcanea. I watched her from my second-story window stained with the dirt of too many memories until she was no more than a shadow diverging around the corner, a brief interlude in the endless night. Turning away, I faced the window, its glass marred by the kiss of the evening's rain. Beyond it, Arcanea's skyline stood like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast, the city's silhouette cutting into the canvas of the starlit sky. Sitting down, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment, taking deep breaths to calm myself. This case would not be an easy one. Retrieving lost or stolen magical items in Arcanea was never straightforward or without danger. Yet Lila's plea unsettled something deep inside me. Maybe it was the haunting memory of losing something precious in this city, or perhaps it was that persistent empathetic streak I couldn't seem to shake off. I should have squashed that feeling long ago, but it lingered, much like a stray kitten that always finds its way back, no matter how far you try to take it away. I was torn between wanting to help and wishing I could ignore the pull completely. Arcanea, I murmured to the silence of my office, the name tasting of both reverence and disdain. You ancient, corrupt heart! What new enigmas are you concealing beneath your enchanted veneer tonight? The city answered not with words but with the distant hum of magic, the occasional flare of a spell in the distance, a reminder that in Arcanea, every night was a new chapter in an ever-unfolding saga of power, corruption, and the eternal quest for truth in a world where shadows were as much a part of life as the light. Dark Jewel of Arcanea. Chapter 2: The Scene of the Crime. The morning light in Arcanea was deceptive, a thin veneer of hope over a city that thrived in the shadows. I made my way to Lila's family shop, the streets still groggy with the night's leftover magic. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of arcane herbs and the distant hum of morning spells. Lila's shop was nestled in a secluded corner of the city, where the ancient magic still murmured softly through the cobblestones. It was a charming little establishment, crafted from warm wood and gleaming glass, now unfortunately scarred by the harshness of a recent intrusion. The door, despite being mended, bore the unmistakable marks of yesterday's violent break-in. Its hinges were slightly askew, and the wood displayed telltale patches where filler had been used to mend the missing sections. As I stepped inside, my boots crunched over the jagged shards of broken glass and the disarray of scattered items, a testament to the chaos that had unfolded. As I entered, the jangle of the bell above the door beating an obnoxious counterpoint to my growing headache, a back office door swung open, revealing Lila standing in the doorway. Lila's expression bore a mixture of relief and worry. "Mr. Moon Whisper, thank you for coming, she greeted, her voice tinged with the strain of recent events. Please, I corrected with a nod, stepping into the shop. The transition from the bustling, magic-infused streets of Arcanea to the quiet, violated sanctuary of this shop was like stepping from one world into another. Let's see what we're dealing with here, Lila. She led me through the shop, her hands nervously fidgeting as she spoke, a telltale sign of someone who's seen their world turned upside down. It happened late last night. I was closing up when I heard the commotion. By the time I got back, the door was already broken, and the amulet was gone. I took in the scene, the destruction not just physical but emotional, evident in Lila's eyes. The place felt like it had been ransacked not just for material gain but to send a message, to shatter the peace. Did you see anyone, or anything out of the ordinary before it happened? She shook her head, a lock of her hair falling across her face, adding a touch of vulnerability to her already distressed demeanor. Nothing, which is what scares me. It's like they knew exactly when to strike. This wasn't just theft, it felt personal. In my line of work, personal thefts are the ones that leave the deepest scars, the kind where the thief steals more than just an object. I nodded, understanding the deeper implications, the undercurrents of revenge or warning beneath this seemingly simple act. We'll find out who did this, Lila. But I need to know why this amulet? What makes it so special? It's been in my family for generations, she explained, her voice lowering as if the walls themselves might listen. In this city, where magic was as much a part of the architecture as the stone and wood, you never knew who or what might be eavesdropping. It's not just an heirloom, it's said to have magical properties. Protection, some say, or perhaps something more. My mind was already racing, connecting dots in the dark, weaving a narrative from the threads of this chaos. An amulet with magical properties in a city where magic was both currency and danger. This was no ordinary theft. It was a calculated move by someone who knew the value of what they took, or perhaps someone who feared its power. I absorbed this information, piecing together the puzzle in my mind. Arcanea's mysteries were often layered like this, each layer revealing more than the last. Well, we'll start by unraveling those properties then. The magic left behind here tells its own story. If you'll be so kind as to go back to your office so you won't interfere with my castings, I'll begin. She nodded apprehensively, her eyes darting nervously before she quickly scurried back to her office. The soft rustle of her footsteps echoed her unease. I knew non-spell casters like her secretly dreaded magic, even if they masked their fear with a facade of indifference when in the public eye. I pulled out my wand, its smooth, polished wood comforting in my grip, and with a whispered incantation, my voice barely more than a breath, I cast Detect Magic. The dimly lit room erupted into a tapestry of faint, glowing lines and spots that danced across surfaces like spectral fireflies. These were the traces, the residual magic left behind from the break-in. Amidst the overturned furniture and papers strewn like fallen leaves, a familiar signature pulsed with a dark energy I recognized all too well, the unmistakable work of shadow magic. This was not the kind of magic taught in the hallowed halls of the prestigious academies of Arcanea, where sunlight streamed through stained glass windows. No, this was something far more insidious, learned only through shadowy cults and grimoires peddled in the back alleys of streets that existed without names, where whispers carried secrets and danger lingered in every shadow. I walked through the shop, my eyes scanning for anything out of place. The amulet's case was empty, but beside it, something caught my eye, a small, almost invisible rune etched into the wood. I knelt, running a finger over it, a spell to keep prying eyes away, crude but effective. Amateurs, I scoffed dismissively, though internally my mind was already whirring like a well-oiled machine, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle laid before me. The evidence, scattered like breadcrumbs, was slowly aligning in my thoughts, working to form a coherent picture that eluded the others. As I was absorbed in my analysis, the rude chime of the shop's bell announced another presence. I turned to see Ella, her dark hair tied back, her sharp eyes scanning the room with professional curiosity. Ella, known in Arcanea's underbelly for her expertise in magical forgery and her knack for uncovering magical signatures, was an asset I had called upon before. "El," she greeted, her voice carrying the weight of shared history. "This looks like a mess you'd dive into headfirst." "Ella, glad you could make it," I said, gesturing to the chaos around us. "Lila's amulet was taken last night. This isn't just theft, there's magic involved that smells of trouble." She walked over, her gaze fixing on the rune I had found. "Shadow magic, huh?" She bent down, her fingers tracing the air above the rune without touching it. "This isn't just any thief, they wanted to hide their trail. But they left a signature. What a curious rune." I stood, looking out into the street where Arcanea was waking up, each citizen carrying their own piece of magic. The city was like a living, breathing spell, and every action had a consequence, whether you could see it or not. As we discussed the implications, a shadow fell across the doorway. I turned to see a member of the city watch, his uniform askew, his eyes scanning the room with more interest than concern. "Detective Moonwhisper," he uttered, his voice oozing with a slick, oily authority that could only be acquired through the tainted channels of corruption. "Officer Venn," I replied, keeping my tone purposefully neutral, with Ella stepping back into the shadows of the shop, her presence known but not acknowledged by the officer. "I heard there was trouble here." His gaze lingered too long on the empty case, his demeanor shifting from law enforcer to something more predatory. "Seems like it," I said, watching him closely. "But I've been hired to retrieve the missing item and will soon have the situation under control." His laugh was short, harsh. "In this city? Control is an illusion, Moonwhisper. You should know that." I didn't know, though I loathed admitting he was right. Arcanea was a city where the law twisted and turned as unpredictably as the magic it harbored. "I'll keep that in mind, officer," I replied, my voice calm but my mind carefully dancing for the correct words to not give him a reason to intrude. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." He left, but not before giving the place one last, lingering look. I knew I'd have to watch my back. In Arcanea, the watch was often more dangerous than the criminals. Ella emerged from the shadows, her expression thoughtful. "He's trouble, Elle. Keep an eye on him." I nodded, returning my attention to the crime scene, my fingers tracing the outlines of the magical residue. "This spell work. It's complex, layered with misdirection and concealment. This wasn't just about stealing an amulet. It was about hiding something or someone's involvement." Ella agreed, her eyes narrowing at the room's corners. "And they weren't careful enough. We've got a trail to follow." "Looks like you've got more secrets than I thought, Arcanea," I whispered to the empty shop, the city's heartbeat pulsing through the walls. I pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook, jotting down notes. The rune, the type of magic, the officer's interest, all pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve, with Ella's help. As we left the shop, the morning light had turned harsh, casting long shadows over the city. I knew this case would lead us into those shadows, into the parts of Arcanea where magic and morality were at their murkiest. But I was ready. After all, in the city, you either danced with the darkness or you got swallowed by it. I was no stranger to the dance. Dark Jewel of Arcanea. Chapter 3: Descent into Darkness. The sun had long set, leaving Arcanea to the mercy of its own dark desires. I navigated through the heart of the city, where the streets narrowed and the buildings leaned in, whispering secrets only the night could comprehend. This was the Undercity, where raw, unrefined magic seeped from every crack, and danger was as common as the cobblestones underfoot. My destination was an old haunt, a place where the city's pulse could be felt most strongly, the Gilded Grimoire, a tavern that served as much information as it did ale. The sign outside flickered with a spell that made its gold lettering dance in the dark, a beacon for those who sought the city's underbelly. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the murmur of spells being cast in hushed tones. I spotted my contact, a goblin named Slick, whose information was as reliable as the spells he sold under the table. He was at his usual spot, the shadows seeming to cradle him. "Elle, you look like you've seen better days," Slick greeted me, flashing a wide, toothy grin that stretched across his face. He wiped the slick grease from his fingers onto a rag that was already stained and filthy. In front of him sat a large, heaping platter piled high with some kind of ribs, their charred edges glistening under the dim light. An unpleasant, malodorous stench wafted from the dish, mingling with the smoky air and making it difficult to breathe. "And it seems like you've crossed paths with a few more adversaries," I observed, my gaze lingering on the fresh, jagged scar etched across his cheek. It was a deep line, still red and slightly swollen, a testament to a recent encounter that hadn't gone in his favor. "I'm in need of some information regarding a break-in, specifically one involving an amulet." His eyes narrowed with a ravenous gleam. "That'll cost you," he crooned. His cruel smile stretched wider, almost splitting his face, fully revealing a menacing row of sharp, pointed teeth that seemed ready to devour anything in their path. I slid a few gold coins across the table, knowing full well the price of knowledge in Arcanea. "Magic signature of a shadow magician, used a stylized concealment rune. Ring any bells?" Slick deftly pocketed the coins, his fingers moving with practiced ease, while his eyes flitted cautiously around the dimly lit tavern, ensuring no prying eyes were upon him. "I might or might not have caught wind of a shadow mage who discreetly offloads his wares at auction," he murmured, his voice low and conspiratorial. "And I might even be acquainted with the buyer. There are whispers, you see, about a new player in the game, a mysterious figure who goes by the Magpie. This enigmatic individual deals in magical artifacts, particularly those that boast unique and peculiar properties." "Unique how?" I pressed, leaning in. "Power, L. The kind that can shift the balance in this city. If your amulet's on his list, it's not just a family heirloom. The Magpie. I'd have to file that name away for future use." "Where can I find him?" I inquired. Slick let out a chuckle, a sound reminiscent of coins clinking together in a velvet purse. "Rumor has it there's an auction taking place beneath the old clock tower, at the stroke of midnight tomorrow. If your amulet is going to be anywhere, that's where you'll catch sight of it. If the Magpie wins an item at auction, he can't be accused of buying stolen goods or arranging for their theft, now can he?" Slick said with an exaggerated wink over that sickening smile. I nodded, allowing my mind to drift as I absorbed the lively atmosphere of the tavern. The air was thick with laughter and the clinking of mugs, while salacious wenches of every imaginable race and complexion flitted about, their eyes glinting with mischief and allure. In shadowy corners, hulking brutes stood sentinel, their gazes sharp and vigilant, some watching over the tavern itself, others protecting the patrons they were hired to guard. It was a chaotic dance of lost souls and simmering villainy, a vivid tableau of Arcanea's underbelly. This city was a tapestry of stories, each thread more twisted and tangled than the last, weaving a narrative that was as captivating as it was dangerous. "Thanks, Slick," I said, standing up. "Keep your head down. Hate to see it detached in a back alley." "Always do," he shouted after me, his twisted face hung with confusion as I ambled out. His uncertainty shone on his misshapen face. He was obviously teetering between feeling threatened and flattered, and I relished him a silent grin in the chaos I left behind. The streets were darker now, the kind of darkness that seemed to seep into your soul. Simmering with the stench of the street refuse left too long in the sun, now becoming a feast for rats or worse. I pulled my coat tighter, feeling the weight of the city's gaze. Every step I took was probably watched, either by thugs, magic, or those who wielded both. As I navigated the labyrinthine depths of the Undercity, my shadow stretched long and thin, a solitary figure against the cobblestone canvas until it was joined by another. Ella emerged from the darkness like a specter, her steps as silent as the whisper of a forbidden spell. Her silhouette was distinct, her frame cloaked in a long, dark coat that seemed to absorb the light around it, making her blend into the night itself. Her hair, a cascade of night black, was pulled back into a tight braid, the only concession to the chaos of her surroundings being the few strands that danced around her face with each step. "Thought you might need some backup," she said, her voice a low murmur that cut through the ambient hum of the city's magical undercurrents, the night air amplifying each syllable with an ethereal echo. "Always welcome," I admitted, feeling the tension ease slightly with her presence. "We're looking for the magpie. Heard of him?" She nodded, her eyes scanning the shadows. "He's not just a collector, he's a manipulator. If he's after this amulet, it means he knows something about its power we don't." Above, the sky was an inky void, barely touched by the city's sparse, enchanted lights, which flickered with an otherworldly glow, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. The occasional orb of conjured light floated past, a reminder that even in this dark place, magic was both a companion and a guide. Ella's eyes, sharp and penetrating, seemed to take in every detail, her gaze cutting through the gloom like a blade through silk. Her presence was not just physical, she carried with her an aura of knowledge, of arcane secrets whispered through centuries, making her as much a part of Arcanea's mystical landscape as the ancient stones themselves. We halted at a shadowy corner where the ancient cobblestones met in a jagged pattern, and there, perched on a rickety stool, sat an old, blind seer. Her hair was a tangled mass of silver, wild and untamed, framing a face etched with the lines of countless years and secrets. Her eyes, though robbed of sight, were milky pools that seemed to gaze into a world beyond our own. Despite her blindness, her senses were eerily sharp, as if she could see through the veils of magic that cloaked Arcanea. "Elredar Moonwhisper, Seeker of Shadows," she croaked, her voice like the rustle of old, dry leaves, carrying the weight of prophecy. Her gnarled hand reached out, her fingers trembling slightly in the cool night air. "Beware the light that leads to darker paths," she warned, her words hanging in the air like a spell, both a caution and a riddle. I reached into my pocket, my fingers finding a cool coin, which I tossed towards her. The coin spun in the dingy light, catching a fleeting glimmer before landing in her palm with a soft plop. Her fingers closed around it, but her gaze, or what felt like it, never left where I stood. "What light do you speak of, old one?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, respecting the sanctity of her words while seeking clarity. The seer's lips curled into a knowing smile, her voice dropping even lower. "The light that dazzles, that promises clarity and truth, often blinds you to the shadows where the real answers lurk. Seek not the obvious path, Elredar, for it is the one most watched." Ella, who had been quiet, stepped closer, her presence adding another layer of intensity to the conversation. "And what of the shadows, then?" she inquired, her tone respectful yet probing, understanding the seer's words held more than just a warning. "The shadows," the seer continued, her voice gaining a cryptic depth, "are your allies in this city of deceit. They will guide you if you learn to listen, to truly see. But remember, even in darkness, there are eyes watching." I nodded, absorbing the wisdom, the caution, and the veiled threats intertwined in her message. The coin in her hand was more than payment. It was an acknowledgement of the debt I owed to those who could navigate the complexities of Arcanea better than most. "Thank you," I murmured, knowing that her words would guide us, or at least, give us pause before we leaped into the unknown. As we moved away, the seer's voice followed us, a soft, haunting echo. "Remember, Elredar, in Arcanea, the light and the shadow are two sides of the same coin. Trust neither fully, but use both wisely." Ella's gaze lingered on the seer. "Every word she speaks is a spell in itself," she murmured, her respect for the old magic evident. The city around seemed to close in as we walked. The buildings seemed to lean close like conspirators, their facades coated in a patina of age and magic. Arcanea's undercity was a tapestry of shadows and secrets, a place where the air itself felt charged with the remnants of spells, where every corner could hide a trap or a treasure. The streets here were narrow, twisting paths that seemed to lead nowhere and everywhere at once, lined with doors that might open to another dimension or merely to dilapidated rooms filled with forgotten dreams. "Ambush!" Ella hissed, her hands already weaving through the air, invoking a protective spell just as the first spell was cast towards us. A bolt of dark energy flew past, narrowly missing me but searing the wall beside us with a hiss. I drew my wand, casting a shield spell to deflect the next attack, but the attackers were numerous, and one managed to get a thrown dagger through. A sharp pain erupted in my side, the dagger slicing through my defenses, leaving a long gash in my side. I staggered but didn't fall, the adrenaline masking the severity of the wound for now. Ella, ever the quick thinker, reacted with a counterattack. She unleashed a burst of light from her palm, not to blind but to illuminate, revealing our attackers as they recoiled from the sudden exposure. They were masked, their faces obscured by dark hoods, but their movements betrayed a mix of surprise and panic. With a grunt of effort, ignoring the throbbing pain, I conjured a gust of wind, aiming it at our assailants. The spell sent them tumbling, giving us a moment's reprieve. "Elle, you're hurt!" Ella exclaimed, her worry evident as she quickly cast a minor healing spell, the light from her hands soothing the wound but not fully healing it. "We need to move, now!" I nodded, gritting my teeth against the pain. "Let's give them something to remember us by." Ella nodded, her lips moving in an incantation. From the shadows around us, spectral figures emerged, illusions of creatures from the city's darkest tales, their forms flickering with menace. The attackers, now facing what they thought were real threats, faltered, their confidence shaken. While they were engaged with nightmarish phantasm, we took the better part of valor running the other way. "Thanks, Ella," I managed, my voice strained, a few blocks later. "We need to get back to my office and regroup." With her support, we made our way back to my office, each step a reminder of the dangers lurking in Arcanea's shadows. Inside, Ella immediately set to work on my wound, her magic more thorough this time, knitting flesh and easing pain. "This isn't just about the amulet, Elle," she said while working, her fingers tracing the residual magic with a practiced touch. "There's a pattern here. A concealment spell this complex, it's not just to hide from mundane eyes. It's to evade other mages." I pulled out my notes, detailing the interactions with Officer Van and the clues from the shop, grimacing as I shifted my weight. "And the city watch is involved, or at least they're sniffing around. Which means someone powerful might be pulling strings." I nodded and reclined onto the cot, allowing the inky blackness to envelop me completely. My final glimpse was of Elle standing above me, her lips curled into a crooked smile that hinted at some unspoken amusement. It was a comforting image, a gentle beacon to hold onto as I surrendered to the depths of oblivion. Dark Jewel of Arcanea. Chapter 4: The Auction of Shadows. The night before the auction was a restless one, the city of Arcanea whispering its secrets through my window. I spent it piecing together what I knew, the amulet, the magpie, and the undercurrents of magical crime that ran beneath Arcanea's surface. The city felt like a living spell, each part interconnected, and I was about to dive into one of its darkest veins. The old clock tower, a relic from a time when mechanical wonders rivaled magic, loomed over the city. Its hands were frozen at midnight, a fitting time for the clandestine gathering I was about to infiltrate. I donned a cloak, its enchantment providing a shadow that clung to me like a second skin, perfect for blending into the night. After the harrowing incident the other night, I concluded that a heightened level of caution was not just necessary but paramount. The shadows of Arcanea seemed to have eyes, and the attack wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a calculated warning. Every step I took now felt like walking on a tightrope strung over a chasm of danger. My senses were on high alert, each noise, each flicker of light, potentially a herald of another threat. I knew now to trust no one, to question every shadow, and to keep my guard up at all times. The city had shown its teeth, and I had felt their bite. Now, every alleyway, every corner, every whisper of magic in the air demanded a second look, a third check. In Arcanea, even the air you breathed could be laced with deceit or danger. The entrance to the auction was hidden beneath the old clock tower, where the city's architecture seemed to twist and turn with the caprices of magic. I navigated the Undercity's labyrinthine paths, my senses sharpened for any sign of traps or prying eyes. The air here was charged with anticipation, the kind that set your skin tingling with the imminent threat of spells. I arrived at the venue, directly under the shadow of the clock tower, its hands eternally stuck at midnight. This place, once a grand hall for timekeeping, now served those for whom magic was currency. The entrance was guarded by two imposing half-orcs, their red eyes alight with the glow of protective enchantments. With a swift, whispered incantation, I cast minor illusion, transforming my appearance into that of a notorious buyer from the darker echelons of Arcanea's market. They scrutinized me for a moment before nodding in recognition, allowing me to pass into the heart of the night's illicit trade. Inside, the room was a cacophony of whispers and the low hum of suppressed magic. Attendees were a mix of nobility in disguise, crime lords, and those like myself, on the hunt for something more than just wealth. The auctioneer, a figure shrouded in shadows, stood on a raised platform, his voice carrying through the room with a spell of amplification. "We have here," he began with a voice that resonated through the dimly lit room, "items of power, of history, of darkness. Let us start with—" His words began to blur into the background as I surveyed the opulent decay surrounding me. The room was filled with faith, high-class filth to be sure, a veneer of sophistication over a foundation of corruption. The elite of the underworld sat around me, their wealth and influence controlling the ebb and flow of illicit and illegal activities that drove the city like a pulsing dark heart. My attention drifted back to the auctioneer as he dramatically announced, "The piece de resistance. An amulet, once thought lost." The room seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation and the lingering scent of old money and forbidden desires. My heart quickened. There it was, suspended in a magical field, its glow muted but potent. I moved closer, analyzing the crowd, looking for the magpie. The bidding started. I had to play this carefully. Raising my hand, I entered the bidding, my voice low but steady. 200 gold pieces. The bids climbed, each one pushing the price higher, the tension in the room palpable. Then, a voice from the shadows, smooth as silk over steel. 1,000 gold pieces. That was him, the magpie. I spun around, barely catching a glimpse of a shadowy figure cloaked in deep, inky darkness. The most striking feature was the ornate mask that concealed his face, meticulously crafted into the likeness of a magpie, each feather delicately etched and glinting in the dim light. His eyes, sharp and piercing, caught the glow of the amulet, gleaming with an intensity reminiscent of a bird of prey on the hunt. I needed that amulet, but not to keep. I needed to understand its true purpose. I bid again, my voice cutting through the murmurs. 1,500. The bidding war continued, but I was outmatched in wealth. The one I impersonated never bid more than this on any items. If I bid more, suspicion would be aroused. The magpie won, his chuckle a whisper of victory as he approached to claim his prize. I had to act fast. My hand slipped into my cloak, pulling out a small, enchanted vial, a sleep potion, enough for one. As the magpie reached for the amulet, his focus entirely on the glittering prize before him, I made my move. The crowd's collective gaze was fixed on the artifact, oblivious to the subtle dance of shadows behind them. With the magpie's attention forward, I deftly slipped the vial into the drink he casually held in his back hand, the liquid within the vial mingling with his beverage unnoticed. Moments later, after he raised his celebratory drink and retreated to the shadowed recesses of his booth, he slumped forward, the potion taking effect. The crowd, their eyes greedily fixed on the next item up for auction, remained oblivious. Seizing the opportunity, I made my exit, deftly purloining the amulet as I wove through the distracted throng to the dimly lit escape routes of the venue. Outside, the city's night was my ally. I hurried through the undercity, my mind racing. The magpie would wake soon, and when he did, I'd be in his sights. But for now, I had what I came for, though the true nature of the amulet was still a mystery. Back in my office, I shut the door with a resounding click, the sound echoing like the final note of a spell cast under the shadows of Arcanea. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the walls, a constant reminder of the peril I had just narrowly escaped. The air was thick with the promise of discovery, or perhaps doom, as I settled at my desk, the amulet lying before me like a treasure from an age where magic was both revered and feared. I pulled the amulet closer, its magic now as clear to my senses as the daylight was to the city dwellers above. It thrummed with an energy that whispered of secrets and power, making it evident that this was no mere decorative trinket. It was a key, but to what, I still had no clue. Yet I knew in my bones that whatever it unlocked could very well shake Arcanea to its very foundations. I began my inspection with the tools of my trade, the old, reliable set of thieves' tools that had served me through countless locks and secrets. With deft fingers, I prodded and poked at the amulet, feeling for any mechanical triggers or hidden catches that might reveal more than its surface suggested. The metal was cool to the touch, its surface smooth yet subtly textured, hinting at the complexity within. But this was no ordinary lock, and soon, I turned to magic, my true ally in the dance of discovery. I cast Detect Magic, and the room was momentarily filled with a soft, ethereal glow, outlining the amulet in hues of arcane light. The patterns on its surface began to shift, revealing not just the magic imbued within but also the presence of a hidden compartment, a secret nestled within secrets. With a mage hand, I manipulated the amulet, turning it over, watching as the light played off its curves, revealing more than the eye could see. There was a pattern, a sequence of magical symbols that, when traced in the correct order, would unlock this hidden chamber. My fingers, guided by both skill and magic, traced the sequence, feeling the amulet respond, its magic vibrating in tune with my touch. A click, not of metal but of magic, resonated through the room, and with a gentle push, a compartment opened where no seam had been visible before. Inside lay a miniature scroll, so finely rolled it seemed more like a piece of thread than parchment. I gently tilted the amulet, and it slid out. As it hit the table, it magically grew back into a normal, full-sized scroll. Carefully, I unfurled it, revealing script in an ancient, flowing hand, its ink shimmering with the residue of long-forgotten spells. With a whisper that barely disturbed the stillness of my office, I cast Read Magic, hoping the spell would illuminate the secrets hidden upon the scroll. The room was bathed in the soft, blue glow of magic, yet the spell's light faded without yielding any more comprehension. With that thought in mind, next I attempted Comprehend Languages, a spell that had never failed me in translating the myriad tongues of Arcanea, both spoken and written. But again the magic failed, the words, if there were any, remained locked away in silence. I sat back, the light from my enchanted lamp casting long shadows across my desk, and pondered. The failure of these spells could only mean one thing: the text was concealed behind a complex cipher, a puzzle of magic and logic that would require more than just the brute force of spells to unravel. The amulet lay before me, its surface now appearing almost defiant in its silence, a mute testament to the layers of protection its creator had woven into it. The clock tower's chimes rang out in the distance, a reminder that time, unlike the secrets of this city, was always moving forward. But as I studied the scroll, the night felt endless, the city outside my window a silent witness my failures. Dark Jewel of Arcanea. Chapter 5: The True Heist. The night had settled over Arcanea like a thick, dark cloak, the skyline a jagged silhouette against a tapestry of stars. In my office, the only light came from an enchanted lamp, casting long shadows that danced across the walls with every flicker. My desk was a battlefield of papers, magical artifacts, and the remnants of spells cast in haste. The air was heavy with the scent of old parchment and the lingering essence of magic, the city's heartbeat a constant reminder of the world outside my window. I sat back, my chair groaning under the weight of my contemplation. The amulet, which had seemed the crux of all this chaos, was now revealed to be merely a decoy, a shiny bauble to distract while the real theft occurred under our noses. My fingers traced the cool metal of the amulet, feeling the magic within, but my mind was elsewhere, on the scroll I had discovered hidden within its secret compartment. With the assistance of my extensive network of contacts, I had gradually pieced together the true nature of the crime. It became clear that an individual, or a group, had orchestrated the theft of the ancient amulet as a means to access the scroll. The scroll itself remained an enigma, a puzzle with numerous potential solutions, its secrets cloaked in layers of mystery and intrigue. This scroll was not just any piece of parchment. It was a cryptographic message, its language a puzzle wrapped in riddles, encrypted in a code that had yet to be deciphered. The script was ancient, almost alien in its complexity, suggesting it was from a time when Arcanea was but a whisper in the universe's vast expanse. As I stood and looked out the window, my reflection melding with the dark canvas of the city's night, I pondered the dual nature of Arcanea. It was a place where creation and destruction danced in an eternal ballet, and I was merely one performer among many. The storm approaching announced itself with distant flashes on the horizon and a low, rumbling growl. My musings were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. I quickly hid the scroll under a stack of papers as Ella entered, her presence bringing a rush of cool night air into the room. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, immediately went to the amulet on my desk. "Looks like you've been busy," she remarked, her voice a mix of curiosity and concern. "More than you know," I replied, pulling out the amulet. "It wasn't the prize, it was the distraction. The real treasure is this scroll, but it's locked away in some ancient cipher." Ella's interest was piqued, her fingers itching to touch the scroll. "Let me see," she said, her expertise in magical scripts and ciphers well known in Arcanea's underground. But before we could delve into the scroll, another knock came, this one more hesitant. It was Lila, her face lighting up at the sight of the amulet. "Elle, did you?" I nodded, handing her the amulet. "It's yours, Lila. Keep it safe. It's more than just an heirloom, it could be dangerous in the wrong hands." Lila's eyes welled with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough," she whispered, handling the amulet as if it were made of glass. "I'll keep it hidden, just like you said." As Lila departed, her steps light with relief, the floorboards creaked underfoot, signaling the end of her immediate worry. I turned to Ella, who watched Lila's exit with a pensive gaze, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the lamp. "She doesn't know how close she came to something much bigger," Ella murmured, her voice low, almost swallowed by the hum of the city outside. "No," I agreed, the word heavy with the implications we both knew too well. "And it's better that way. But this scroll—" I retrieved it from its hiding spot under the papers, the parchment feeling oddly warm to the touch. As I unfolded it, the intricate script seemed to dance in the dim light, each character a puzzle piece of an ancient, forgotten game. "This looks intriguing," I said, my voice a mixture of awe and determination. The scroll was not just a piece of history. It was a challenge, a labyrinth of linguistic and magical complexity designed to guard its secrets from all but the most persistent, or the most fated. The language was unlike anything currently taught in Arcanea's academies, suggesting a depth of knowledge lost to time or intentionally hidden. It was clear this would be no quick task. It would require patience, skill, and perhaps a bit of luck. Ella leaned closer, her brow furrowed as she scrutinized the script. "This isn't just any cipher," she said, her voice laced with a blend of excitement and caution. "It might take months, even years, to crack. But if what you say is true about its potential to disrupt Arcanea's balance, we need to start now." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders like a cloak of lead. "We'll work on it together, but quietly," I decided. "Arcanea is watching, and we've just stirred something deep." The city had eyes in places you wouldn't think to look, and the last thing we needed was to draw the wrong kind of attention. Ella gave a small, knowing smile, one that spoke of shared secrets and the thrill of the unknown. "Let's dance with the shadows then," she suggested, her tone light yet resolute. "I'll start looking into similar scripts, see if there's a key we're missing." She moved towards the door, her hand resting on the knob as she paused. "Be careful, Elle. You made another enemy on this case, and in Arcanea, enemies remember." With those parting words, she left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like the sealing of a pact. The room felt suddenly larger, the silence more profound. I was alone with the scroll, its secrets whispering from the parchment like the distant echoes of the city. Outside, the night was punctuated by the occasional flash of lightning, each bolt illuminating the room briefly, casting long, stark shadows across the walls. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within Arcanea's magical governance, a silent promise of change, of upheaval, or perhaps of revelation. As I turned back to the scroll, I knew this was just the beginning of a much longer journey, one that would delve into the very soul of the city, its past, and possibly its future. Looking out at the storm-blasted night, the city seemed to breathe, its lights a testament to the life and magic that thrived despite the darkness. I knew this storm was merely a metaphor for another storm brewing in the shadows that could either save or doom us all. With this case, I wasn't closing a chapter but opening a door to a labyrinth of secrets waiting to be unraveled. As the clock struck another hour, I turned back to my desk, lightning casting a brief shadow of my tall outline across the worn wooden surface. The scroll lay there, a silent adversary, its secrets locked away, waiting for the right combination of knowledge, magic, and perhaps a bit of luck. This was just the beginning of another adventure in the heart of Arcanea, a journey into the depths of its history, magic, and the very essence of power.